Welcome to Human Factors Tech, where we explore how technology is shaping the human experience. I'm your host, Jared Degnan. Every week, we dive into the latest innovations in AI, human factors, and design. We'll talk to experts who are building the next generation of technology that empowers and inspires. Join us as we uncover how tech is transforming the way we as humans live, work, and connect. Let's build better technology that embraces and enhances the human experience. Welcome back to episode 7 of Human Factors Technology, everybody. Again, my name is Jared Degnan, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. I have been pleasantly surprised by the interest and the growth of this channel. I'll have to mention that this project is really more about my own curiosity, and it means a lot that all of you tune in to help explore some of the topics that we are exploring right now. So it seems I've been on a little bit of a wearables tear lately, and my next interview is no exception. So as I was talking with ProGlove, it got me interested, particularly about human factors as it relates to worker safety, and in particular, the implications for wearables privacy. And my next guest really has an interesting perspective on all of this. We, as technologists, we take for granted that we have a certain level of comfort with technology. We're okay with it. We work with it every single day. The question is, what if you work with folks on the front lines who are not as technology adept when you give them a high-tech device that is meant to improve their working conditions? How are they going to react to it? So I'm really excited today to be interviewing the CEO of Slate Safety, Zach Braun, who provides a very interesting perspective, not only because he and his team have developed a really interesting device with a lot of great implications for worker safety, but also the thought and the process behind developing a device that in all argument is not designed for people who are adept and are really immersed in high technology like we are. So I hope you will get as much from this interview as I did. Off to the interview. And welcome back to Human Factors Technology. Today I have with me Zach Braun of Slate Safety. So welcome, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time. So why don't we start out by talking a little bit about Slate Safety. Can you introduce us to the product and maybe talk a little bit about what influenced its design and its success?
No, definitely. So really, Slate Safety is a startup based here out of Atlanta, Georgia. So really, our goal is to eliminate preventable worker injuries and deaths. So we started by working with the military. So it's being used by the Army, Navy, Air Force, DHS to protect recruits as they're going through like basic training. While it was being used at basic training, some Department of Energy safety professionals they saw it and they thought it had great applicability in the industrial safety sector. They started using it in their DOE work, specifically like environmental remediation. And from there, it just kind of spread like wildfire through, all types of industries where there's a potential for specifically heat-related injuries. So like steel, construction, utilities, nuclear power, and kind of so forth from there.
Great. So just to kind of do a refresher, the product is really, it's a wrist-based monitor. And you mentioned temperature is one thing. Can you talk us through what are some of the other features of the product and what are some of the things that you're looking out for in terms of worker safety?
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, so it's an arm-worn wearable. I actually have it over here. So you can see, it's about the size of the palm of my hand. Goes on the upper arm. And yeah, really our bread and butter that we started with was we created an algorithm that measured core body temperature. It's been validated by several different universities at this point that cited essentially to be within plus or minus zero point 0.3 degrees Celsius of your actual core body temperature. So that's really exciting development there. And so that was really our bread and butter was heat stress. This year we've really had an emphasis on lone worker injuries.
Mm.
So a lot of our clients that are using it for heat stress, we're like, oh, is there a way we could double this up? And, it could be a heat stress plus lone worker, combo device. And so there's a GPS on there which can be turned on or off. There's no movement detection, fall detection, impact detection, all that kind of stuff to help prevent, people getting stranded when they're, have an injury and they're working by themselves.
Really interesting. So let's look at this from the worker's perspective for a moment. The target user. Obviously, there's a couple different stakeholders involved here. There's the management and the supervisors who have a vested interest in worker safety, obviously, to avoid not only heat stroke, but workplace injuries is a huge thing just from a financial and from a risk management perspective. But talk to us a little bit about from the worker's perspective. I can imagine that, particularly with some of the segments that you're working with, these are guys who have pride in their physical prowess. And they might take a look at a device like this and say, I'll tell you when I've had enough. What do you say to those kinds of users, and how has that influenced the way that you have designed and rolled out the product?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We've actually had, a little bit of the opposite experience. Like you're saying, like a lot of these workers, they have like a never back down attitude. Work with a lot of firefighters, for example. They're super macho, super tough kind of crowd, and they are never going to call themselves out. Even if they are about to have a heat stroke. So it actually helps to have an extra set of eyes on them. That's it's not a subjective factor, it's objective. And it's actually measuring their core body temperature. And people set safety thresholds. So if you go above this temperature, then you got to go take a break, rest, water, shade, that kind of thing.
Okay. So talk to me about the design of the device itself. Obviously, there's a lot of technology packed into a very small space. How
Mhm.
do you ensure that the wearable doesn't contribute to stress or distraction on the job?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so there's other wearables out on the market as well that do core body temperature monitoring and this kind of heat stress, lone worker type approach. But really, where we try to differentiate ourselves is by being extremely practical. So we make it very easy for them to use it. Kind of comes from the military side. If you're deploying this to 1,000 recruits, it has to be really straightforward and really easy. Um, and so basically, there's no. I have the device here again, but there's no buttons on here. You just put it on. These little LEDs on the back. They'll sense your skin and it'll turn on and it just starts transmitting over the cell network. There's no need to like pair it to a phone or anything like that. They just put it on and they can keep going on with their day. And really, at the end of the day, if the worker themselves are interested in it, there's a Fitbit like app that they can download on their phone and they can kind of see their stats from the day. That's really optional.
Very cool. So let's stick on the subject of analytics a little bit. You mentioned heat stroke ahead of time. I'm assuming that there was something that motivated you as the leader of this organization, a problem that needed to be solved. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the typical problems or quantifiable issues are prior to this device, and then maybe talk a little bit about some of the impact that you've seen once this device is implemented?
Yeah, no, definitely. So a little bit, I'll start with the military side because that's definitely like where we started. And even to back it up, a little bit farther than that, we started the company as students out of Georgia Tech here in Atlanta. So I was working on my master's in computer science at the time, as were my co-founders. Um, But we got essentially like a military contract while we were in school to kind of develop this technology with the Air Force because they knew this was a problem. They knew they were, essentially the environment's only getting hotter. There was more and more heat related injuries every single year. So they needed a way to solve that problem. And at the base that we started with and that they kind of piloted the system with, they were having over 30 serious heat stress injuries per year. So, people actually going to the hospital with those heat stress injuries. And so once we installed our system there, they haven't had a single heat stress injury since we've installed it there in like 2022. So I've been really proud of that number and being able to help them not have heat related injuries, and from there kind of scaling that out to other bases as well as the other industries. So we work with a lot of clients in like the steel industry, for example. I know they were talking about having somewhere between 5 and 10 OSHA recordables per year, and they've been able to reduce that to 0 to 2 per year since then.
Yeah, I can imagine that. When we talk about preventing risk incidents or risk mitigation, you think about robots in grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
Those pay for themselves almost immediately with a single incident being mitigated. I can imagine this is very similar, and the efficacy sounds really amazing. Let's talk a little bit about some of the data that you collect and the security, because obviously, that tends to be something that's really on the minds of a lot of users of this kind of data, where they can see this thing. Okay, great. I understand that it's going to protect me, but then what other information are you collecting? We've interviewed some previous wearable manufacturers on the show, and they've talked about data collection and safety and whatnot. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the data that's collected through the wearable is handled responsibly, and how you go about not only ensuring that for the worker but also for the managers as well?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, we have very high level of enterprise level kind of cybersecurity certifications and practices in place. Sometimes I think we go a little too overboard on the security side, but it's better to be a little overboard than underboard there. Um, but essentially, we have a cybersecurity certification that enterprises like to see. It's called SOC 2 Type 2. And it's just, a third party audit comes in, makes sure, we're doing everything right. That takes about 6 months out of the year for them to actually do this audit. They also do penetration testing as part of that, where they're physically trying to, attack our system and get into it. And that's all from like a third party. That's not us, saying we have that. And then from a kind of like user privacy, organization data kind of perspective, we basically allow the organizations to set up the system however they want. So it's extremely customizable and very flexible. So they can have essentially all the data they want in there, based on their own policies. They can anonymize that data, or they can just have alerts in there. So there's kind of three different levels that we let the organization choose.
Very cool. So I guess we really can't talk about data without talking about AI, because that tends to be a giant buzzword in the industry. Talk to us a little bit about your approach to AI. You mentioned being able to do a benchmark level set for a worker's particular body temperature, which I think is really important, because obviously some people run hot, some people run cold. And in order to establish those safety mechanisms, you have to know what is normal for that particular individual. Talk to
Mhm.
us about how you use AI now and how you see AI coming into play more and more, in particular to prevent workplace hazards.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, there's been a lot of great advances in AI, recently. We've been using like some rudimentary versions of it, I would say. It's kind of been around since the 1960s, and it's just, now it's starting to gain a lot of kind of buzzwords and traction as of late. Um, but yeah, so we try to base everything very statistically. That's kind of our approach in a lot of our algorithms. So, for the baselining, we're looking at like a 21-day look back window, for example. Um, and we actually just created a new page that we launched at the beginning of this year called the Insights page.
Hmm.
So the insights page has different algorithms on there, which can show you. Um, so, sorry, to back up a second, so when an alert goes off, this device vibrates to tell the worker to take a break, right? And so, kind of the whole idea behind that is prompting behavioral change. So, when it vibrates, we want that person to realize it's vibrating, go take a break, and cool back down from their biometrics. So, we call that a heat stress intervention. So, you can actually see on the insights page how many workers are actually listening to those vibrations and how quickly are their biometrics coming back down. We mark it as a fast or a good heat stress intervention if it happened within 30 minutes of that vibration coming off. Does that kind of make some sense there?
No, it absolutely does. That's fantastic. Um, so let's talk a little bit about just general trends in wearables. Wearables are just an incredibly hot segment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different ones in them. Obviously, a lot of us have Apple Watches.
Yeah.
There's other wearables out there. Talk to me a little bit about where do you see wearables going in the future? And how is Slate Safety preparing to address these trends, either with your current product backlog or products that you might be coming out with in the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So yeah, wearables in general, I kind of picture as there's kind of two sides. There's kind of the consumer wearables, which is like your Apple Watch, Garmin watch, Whoop, um, Aura. The Ring is kind of taken off lately. Um, And so those are, really great for consumer kind of fitness and really behavioral changes there too. The Whoop can kind of tell you, oh yeah, I'm drinking alcohol. This is, upsetting my strain score. Stuff like that. Um, and so that there's kind of like the consumer track, and then there's this more industrial track. So we really picture kind of two different, wearables, and they really have different uses. So that the industrial track is really focused on safety and keeping the worker safe, whereas the consumer track is more focused on fitness, optimizing human performance, stuff like that. And they kind of have different sensors, and then they're optimized for different reasons.
Very cool. All right, let's kind of wrap this up in terms of some of your own personal learnings. As CEO, what are some of the things that you've learned about the intersection of human behavior and safety through the development and deployment of these products? Has there been anything that has surprised you, interested you, changed your mind? Obviously, this started as a Georgia Tech startup, which is phenomenal. The fact that you were basically recruited straight out by the military is proof positive that you've got something going here. But I'm curious to know, in your personal journey, what are some of the things that have surprised you? What are some of the things that you might pass on to others who are trying to learn from some of the successes that you've had and adapt their products to human behavior?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the biggest things, especially as like an engineer, you always want to find like the most like correct answer, and so you're trying to optimize for that. But it is kind of more of a fuzzy space, a little bit more of a gray space than you would expect. And so, really listening to our customers has really been key for us. So we have an iterative feedback cycle directly with our customers. So our engineers that are working outside my office right here, they're directly talking to customers, taking their feedback into account, and pushing out features for them. So that's really been key to our success.
Great. Well, Zach, for those of our audience who are interested in learning more about Slate Safety, how would they get in touch with you or find out more information?
Yeah, I would just push them to our website. It's just slatesafety.com. And then you could email us at info@slatesafety.com as well. Thanks so much for having me today, Jared. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for the insights. I really want to thank Zach for taking the time. I think that what he is doing is really, really intriguing because it is in this category of wearables that isn't just for the tech minded, it's really helping to improve overall awareness of the human condition and improve worker safety, which, as you heard from him, is just it's his passion, and I really appreciate what Slate Safety is doing. So that's going to be it for this episode. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. As usual, if you have comments or questions, or you feel like you've got a great topic or you have a great startup that you want to feature, please email me at hello@humanfactorstech.com. That's hello@humanfactorstech.com, and let's get them on the show. I am also really excited about my next episode. I am actually going to be sharing some tips and tricks of my own trade, starting with interactive personas. And so I really encourage you to tune in to next episode, which will come out in about 2 weeks, because I have had a lot of fun creating these interactive personas, and I think you will find them not only extremely interesting, but extremely helpful, particularly if you work in designing technology for humans. So that's going to be it for this episode. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jared Degnan. This has been Human Factors Technology. Until next time, stay human. Thanks for joining us on Human Factors Tech. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. To stay up to date on future episodes and explore more about how technology is shaping the human experience, follow us on Instagram or visit our website at humanfactorstech.com. Until next time, stay human and keep building technology that empowers and inspires.